Hello again, Struck. Here I am with my first Diablo 4 post-launch build. I have 25 pre-launch, ready for launch builds, but this is the very first I'm making after the game has launched, the Shatterer. Shatterer is an interesting build that is using, as the name suggests, the Shatter key passive of the Sorcerer, but it's combining it with Fireball as an enchantment, so it's kind of like a fire and ice build, with a priority on the ice, because we're using ice shards as our single target burst damage, but thanks to the ice shards enchantment, which we're also using, we also have some splitting ricochets, and this one keeps the bosses and the elites bursted down while ricocheting to whatever's nearby, and also anything that dies shatters in an explosion, also does fireball explosion, and with a certain unique item, dice hard bryce, we also have a chance to trigger frost nova when the enemy dies. So it's something extremely fun. There are few more unique items I would suggest using other than the Ice Hard Bryce, which would be the Frostburn Gloves. There's the Ring of Starless Skies, if I'm not mistaken, and there was the Harlequin Crest, which again, it's very difficult to get. I think it's a very interesting setup. It's got the AoE clearing, it's got the single target bursts. So with a single Frost Nova, you can get rid of the majority of trash mobs, and if there's any elites around those trash mobs, they will take damage from the explosions. I hope you enjoyed this build. I hope you like testing it, and let me know in the comments what you think about it. But buckle up and let's go. We're starting with the skill tree. As you can see, 1 point into Frostbolt, it's all we need, and we're using the Glinting Frostbolt for extra mana generation. 2 points into Fireball because of the enchantment, and we want the enchantment to have those increased radius, that increased radius. So there is that. Next up, we have 3 points into Ice Shards with additional 4 to level it up. So a total of 7 points into Ice Shards, maxed out Ice Shards with the Greater Ice Shards. I personally prefer Greater. Some of you might prefer Destructive, but since we have Mystical Frost Nova, Destructive is not going to be needed, and I think Greater would be much better for us. Moving on to defensive, getting 3 points into Flame Shield to get Shimmering Flame Shield for extra healing. We need the skill for extra mobility as well, and for invulnerability for immune, pretty much. Shimmering Teleport, a little bit of extra reduction when we teleport, and since it's a cooldown skill, it also would trigger protection. Then Frost Nova, again, the single point into it with another 2 for the upgrades. Getting Mystical Frost Nova is amazing, super good. 1 point into Align the Elements, just so we can get protection. And with protection, every time we use any of those 3 defensive skills or our ultimate, we get barriers, good barriers, which depend on our maximum life, so obviously we would want to get as much life in our gear as possible. I'm using 3 points into Glass Cannon. If you're having trouble surviving, remove those 3 points into Glass Cannon, maybe you can put 2 of those here, and the other one you could maybe put into Frostbolt or something. Or into one of the defensive skills if you want a better cooldown for them. 3 points into Elemental Attunement, needless to say, it's great and it stacks very well with the Unwavering aspect. 3 points into Precision Magic, it's needed, it stacks nicely with this one, it helps it trigger more often. 3 points into Icy Veil, 3 points into Cold Front, 3 points into Snap Freeze, as well as 3 points into all those other Ice Passive, Frigid Breeze, Icy Touch, Permafrost, and Hoarfrost. And for Inferno, we only need 2 points. We need the base Inferno and we need the Suki pulling version of it. The key passive is Shatter. If you have any questions, if anything's not clear why I'm taking what, feel free to ask me in the comments. In terms of unique gear, there are 2 extremely important, actually there are 4 extremely important items, but out of those, 2 I would put as high priority. Priority 1 would probably be Frostburn Gloves and Ice Hard Bryce. The Frostburn Gloves give you crit chance, cold damage, freeze duration. It's hard to get freeze duration, you could get crowd control duration from various places, and it gives you chance to restore primary resource as a lucky hit. It also gives you a lucky hit chance to freeze enemies for 2 seconds. Ice Hard Bryce further gives you more freeze duration. It gives you damage to injured enemies, damage to frozen enemies, it gives you intelligence, and it gives you enemies that die while frozen have 11 to 20% chance to unleash a Frost Nova, which goes amazingly well with this build. Now, for the other 2 unique items, I had to open my browser because I haven't seen them drop for me. The Harlequin Crest is one of the best, if not the best item to have if you want to play multiple characters. It gives you damage reduction. It gives you 2, which goes up to 4 ranks to all skills. It gives you maximum life, it gives you cooldown reduction, which again, it's amazing to have on a helmet. It gives you crafting material drop rate, and it gives you all stats. This crafting material drop rate is so good when doing hell tides for certain materials like the bloodfiend rose and the orbs, the forgotten orbs or whatever it was called that's needed for rerolling. Ring of Starless Skies, the fourth item I would recommend. Each consecutive core skill cast reduces the resource cost of your next core skill by 5 to 10% up to a maximum of 30%. It gives you all stats, it gives you working hit chance, which is super important for this build, core skill damage and damage to crowd controlled enemies, which would again stack with damage to frozen and stuff like that that we have from the other items. So hopefully this is clear why we took all those 4 things. For the legendary aspects, there are a few. I don't have everything exactly as I would normally do it, but the way I would do it is I would put on the helmet exploiter's aspect until the Harlequin crest drops. And exploiter's aspect I could show you is this one here, where you get increased crowd control duration, and while enemies are unstoppable, again values for bosses you deal increased damage to them. On the weapon I would put piercing coat, and it will remain there even with the uniques because we're not using a unique weapon. Ashard Pierce dealing extra damage less not extra, dealing less damage 25 to 20 per subsequent enemy hit. Then for the offhand I would use Shatter. It's something new that wasn't in my previous build because I didn't know it existed. Explosions from the Shatter key passive deal 30 to 40% increased damage if enemies die while frozen. Now, on the amulet, I would suggest Unwavering. It's a low chance, and having that being in the amulet, being able to boost it up to 9% from the up to 5 normal would be pretty solid, or up to 6. I think the normal is up to 6. It goes up to 9 when it's in an amulet. So chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills, taking the red damage. This stacks very well with our passive that does something similar. Now, in one of the rings, I would put Band of Control, and this one eventually will get replaced. I would put the control aspect, then immobilized turn to frozen, and this eventually gets replaced by Ring of Starless Skies that I showed you. And I would use Prodigy aspect. I don't have it right now to show you, but what I can do is I could show you in a moment from my website, that one. For now, I'm using Conceited. Conceited is an aspect I wouldn't mind recommending as an additional aspect you could consider in the build. There are quite a few that you could consider in the build, but Conceited would go very well because we have a ton of barriers. Now, Adventurer, I would actually put not Adventurer, Protector. The Protector aspect of the Protector will be in the legs until the Ice Heart Bryce. Not sure how well it will be once the Ice Heart Bryce is lost, but we'll see how that goes. I've used the Ice Heart Bryce and I had the Protector in my chest because I had it. But when you have all the unique items, Protector will need to be removed from the slot. Before the Frostburn drops, on the gloves you would want Conceited. You would want this one there. And eventually remove it from there. Then on the chest you would want Frost Blitz. Currently I'm using Frost Blitz on the helmet, but you would want this on the chest armor for the final version of the setup. So Frost Nova getting an extra cooldown and the cooldown per charge increasing by between 40 and 30%. And as I mentioned, in the helmet you would want Exploiter. So what else are we missing? We're missing Fortune on the boots. You would want Fortune on the boots. Lucky hit chance is increased while you have a barrier active. Again, extremely important for this build to stack as much as possible lucky hit chance. And with that, I think we've covered everything. Now I'll quickly switch to my website and show you, not my website, to my browser, and I'll show you some of the stuff, such as including the Prodigy that gives you mana when using a cooldown. Using a cooldown skill with cooldown restores 15 to 25 mana. So those are all of the ones that I've shortlisted that work for the build. This is how I would arrange them. I don't recommend using a two-hander because in my opinion it won't be worth it losing that cooldown reduction that you can get from a offhand aspect, from an offhand weapon. This cooldown reduction is too good to lose it. And sure, you get a little bit of extra DPS of a two-handed maximum upgrade versus maximum upgrade at one hand versus offhand. And you get double the effectiveness of one aspect, but again, you're losing another one aspect. When you have 4 unique items, you're already losing a lot of important aspects. And definitely wouldn't recommend that for this build. Especially losing that cooldown reduction, it's all about cooldowns here. It's all about having something like 30. You can even get 25%, 25-second inferno cooldown if you have enough of them stacked up. So hopefully everything is clear here. For the gems, I would recommend 5 rubies for the armor for maximum life. I would recommend 2 emeralds for crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies for the weapon and for the offhand, like so. And obviously, I would recommend diamonds for the accessories, unless you need resistances to a certain resistance. But getting X amount of resistance to all elements obviously better. But again, if all of them except one or two are super good, then just focus on that one or two and don't use all elements on all of them. Good alternative choices for the weapon if you don't have good emeralds, if you can't craft them, but gems never are a problem in this game. That shouldn't be the case. Good options would be probably Sapphire, crystal damage to crowd control, but again, not as good on bosses. Another thing, overpower damage, not as bad. You don't overpower as much on a mage, but you do overpower every now and then. And ultimate skill damage, not as bad, but with a 30-second cooldown already, it's probably worth it every now and then. But again, not as good as the Emerald. For the armor, alternative choices are barrier generation, but having more life means bigger barriers. So barrier generation not as great as an option. Skull, another thing that again some people might want for the healing received, but again, if you take Imbiber, which we do, it's not necessary to get extra healing received. You already have plenty of it, and overall, that's just how it goes with that. With the gems, I won't recommend the other ones in the majority of the cases for this build. Regarding roles of the gear, I have on my website and on the spreadsheet full list, but I want to keep it shorter here, and I'll tell you what the most important for me would be in which slot. In the helmet, I would ideally have something with cooldown reduction and HP. Those would be the two things I would want. So ideally, I would try to get something that either has reasonable amount of cooldown reduction or reasonable amount of HP, and then just reroll for the other one. Sure, there's a bunch of other useful things, such as skill levels to some of the skills we're using, such as mana, and all sorts of stuff like total armor and resistances if you really need to patch them up. For the armor, again, I would want cooldown reduction. Not armor cannot get cooldown reduction. I would want HP. On the armor, I would want HP, and ideally, I would want something like cold damage, and I would want something like all stats, or willpower, or dex, because willpower and dex we need for our Paragon boards. We have plenty of intelligence as is, but dex and willpower would be nice. So I would say high priority would be HP and ideally cold damage or regular damage. And then after that, you want stats like dex, willpower, and all stats for that one. The same goes for this one, by the way, with the stats. You want those stats everywhere. For the gloves, before you get the Frostburn, you would want 3 ranks to Ice Shards, including maybe if you can get Wookie some attack speed, but even if you don't get attack speed, there are other useful things like crit chance, amazingly useful crit chance to get, and Wookie hit chance, also super useful to get. So if you get 3 ranks to Ice Shards, maybe crit chance, maybe Wookie hit chance, and maybe either some stats or some type of damage that would help, like cold damage and so on, that would be great. For the legs, life, priority number 1 for me. Bigger life, bigger barriers. You want to survive one-shots on higher tier content. And willpower and dex, very useful to get there. Stuff like total armor, also not bad. Stuff like ranks to certain skills, also not so bad to get. But again, the priority should be on life, and then maybe some stats like dex, willpower, and all stats, if you can. For the boots, ideally you get movement speed, regular movement speed. Then stuff like mana cost reduction is amazing. Ranks to Frost Nova would also be amazing. If you have to prioritize ranks to a certain of your defensive skills, Frost Nova is the one. And then if you can get movement speed after killing an elite, it's not bad. Or stats like dex, willpower, all stats would be nice as well. On the weapon, stuff like cold damage, stuff like critical chance, critical damage with cold. Stuff like damage to, you have to choose. Do you want to play it as a distant or a close? You go in close and use Frost Nova. So maybe focusing on the close damage would be nice. If you have enough HP and survivability, close damage won't be a bad way to play this with 3 defensive skills. So again, damage to injured is good, damage while healthy is good, chance to execute not so bad, but we already are good enough against elites, so we don't need to execute against elites. But yeah, some of the good damages, even overpower might not be bad, but I would prioritize damage to vulnerable, core skill damage, and you can even try and get some stats here. On the offhand, must have cooldown reduction and mana cost reduction. If you don't have one of those, reroll for it, but you try to get at least one of those two in it. Sure, you can get a chance to restore primary resource. It's amazingly good. Maybe second best you could get after mana cost reduction and cooldown reduction. And after that, maybe few with stats or damages to core skills and stuff like that, code skills and so on. In the rings, again, crit chance, cold damage, Wacky hit chance, damage to core skills, things like those would be nice. I don't know if it can roll with mana cost reduction or resource cost reduction, but it could definitely give you maximum mana, and that's not so bad. There's also damage to crowd control and stuff like that, but you shouldn't prioritize. Maybe damage to vulnerable because it works on bosses, but I would go crit strike chance, crit strike damage, wacky hit chance, and those should be maybe high priorities, and maybe cold damage. On the amulet, you want cooldown reduction. Must have cooldown reduction on the amulet. There are some other useful things. By the way, on rings and amulets, you can also get life. So if you can get those, get them. On the amulet, cooldown reduction priority number 1. Maybe ranks to certain passives that are useful, ranks to certain actives that are useful is not bad. Damage to cold, life as well. Stuff like that won't be a bad thing to have overall. Again, there's also resource generation on the rings, by the way. But overall, there's a lot of stats. I've included lists, but I try to tell you at least what's high priority for me in this few minutes. For the Paragon boards currently on my level 70 Sorc, I obviously don't have the final version of what it is like, so I would have to go to my website to show you stuff. First of all, for example, glyphs. My glyphs are level 11, 6, the ones I'm using. I'm only using 3 Paragon boards, so there isn't much I would be able to show you. I've started getting the foundations done, but it would be best if I show you the final version from a build calculator. So here it is. I have 2 versions, and in version 1 we have 211 Paragon points, meaning you still have 12 points until 223, which should be the maximum. With the 20 from Renown and 3 from Lilith statues, which means you should have enough to take the Icefall if you want it as a legendary node. The other version is with 183 Paragon points. As you can see, the difference is I didn't take all those things here. Again, this is the earlier version, the earlier step. It's not the version; it's the same thing. It's just with what it would look like earlier in the progression in your levels. So that's 40-ish points difference roughly. More than 40-point difference, which again, around 8 level difference. So around level 92, if you have all the other points, you should have this. Now, what boards did I take? Starting board, then we have Enchantment Master, we have Icefall, we have Burning Instinct here, and here we have Elemental Summoner. And in none of those, we are taking the legendary node. But with the points I've left, Icefall is a good decision, good synergy with this build. Sure, it takes around 12 points to reach it, or 11 points to reach it. So that's a bit expensive to reach it just for this effect. So it's probably, some of you might not want it. That's why I didn't include it in that final version. But something worth mentioning is, I'll mention it in a moment. First of all, we have Enchanter over here in the first starting board. For every 5 intelligence within range, you deal up to, at max rank, 15 increased non-physical damage, and for each skill equipped in your enchantment slot, you get resistances to that skill, which for us would be fire and ice, fire and cold. So what I said that is worth mentioning is here I'm using destruction, and here I'm using exploit. And as you can see, exploit is for every 5 dex purchased within range, you deal 6 increased damage to vulnerable targets. While this one is for every 5 dex within range, you deal up to 15 at max rank increased crit strike damage. Now, what you want is you want to use destruction in this one until this one is maxed out, and then you want to swap them out. Because in this board, you have 39 dex. On this board, you have 49 dex, which is 30 extra crit strike crit damage with core skills. Crit strike damage with core skills, which again, super useful to get that extra 30 versus extra 12 increased damage to vulnerable targets for those extra 10 points of dex within the range of the glyph. And this one we mostly took for the stuff around it, but I decided, okay, we use Inferno, we use Flame Shield. So why not take damage reduction from burning and the damage to burning enemies at least a little bit. So you might end up feeling this one here and this one here, those 2 points that I didn't take, although this one will require the willpower investment. Let's go through all the other stuff we took. We also took Frostbite here. For every 5 willpower purchased within range, you deal 22.5 increased damage to shield targets, and when you meet the minimum requirement, there's 13%, enemies deal 13.3% reduced damage to you for 5 seconds after they are no longer frozen. And what you have over here, Imbiber. For every 5 willpower purchased within range, you deal 15% increased damage while healthy. And you also get 30% increased potion healing, which is nice. Both of those are 54 willpower. I try to get the most willpower possible. And again, you have enough points to go for Ice Fall if you want it. If you want to do that, you can. And you might even have 1 or 2 points left after taking it to maybe take something here or to maybe take something in the other stuff. Now let's see what else we've taken in those boards. Over here we have that non-physical damage intelligence. You have a little bit of extra resistances because of the intelligence, because we need the intelligence. And then what else you have over here? We've taken the non-physical damage intelligence cluster. We've taken some of the things around resistance and intelligence, mainly because the willpower is here. Although this is Dex board, we don't need the willpower, but taking that willpower is not a bad thing, because you would need willpower for some of those yellow nodes, and Dex. Willpower and Dex would be needed. Now, on the way to exit, you have a choice to make. Do you want to go straight up for the next glyph? Especially if it's leveled up, you definitely want to go there. Before that, if you don't want to, you can just spend some points here, get some non-physical damage and damage to elites. And if you don't want to rush to the next board, you can also get this non-physical damage here with extra life. You don't need this one though. Unless you need it, then you take it. Now, other stuff you could do is, while you're here, you're taking damage reduction from chilled enemies, not a must-have. If you don't need it, don't take it. That could save you a few points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points you can save here. But you actually would need to put 1 point that way, so you can get this willpower. Or you could just put the point here, but I wouldn't recommend the strength. You need to put that 1 point here. I'll save that with that with that one difference, and it would be fine. Another thing you could do is you can save yourself a point here. The moment you have those points that way, you no longer need this dex point, because this one connects here, and this one connects here. So you don't need that 1 point, so you can save that 1 point from this place here if you want it. If you don't need that extra dex, but if you really need one specific point, grab it, take it, use it. Over here, what we have is some damage reduction from enemies that are burning. Again, not a must-have, but you need to take the dex. So this one is not a must-have, but the other ones I would strongly recommend taking. And what you do have here is you need to put 1 point this way, or you need to make the choice. I intentionally left it that way to show you that you need to make a choice. Do you put int or do you put strength? I personally would put int. I personally would make it that way, and again, I'll save this with the updated version. I just wanted to have it that way to remind me for the video. But overall, you're taking dex, and if you don't want that willpower, don't take it. It's not needed, but I think, again, since we do need willpower, having some extra willpower here and there, not bad, but this could be how you exit this board from that way. And again, this one connects over here, so you don't need this connection this way. Now over here, you're just taking as much willpower as you can, and maybe, again, since you need that willpower, you take that, but I wouldn't put points over here. And it's not worth it to spend so many points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points, just to be able to get that non-physical damage resistant to all elements. But if you think you want to sacrifice some of the other stuff you've taken, do it. And again, eventually you take those things here. Wookiee hit chance. First of all, you take the damage to burning enemies and damage to elites. If you don't need the damage to burning enemies, you can just skip that point. But you do need to take this to reach over here for the execute chance to non-elites, to injure non-elites, and to get that attack speed, which is casting speed. And then eventually you go up and you take this damage reduction from elites, damage reduction from elites, damage reduction from elites, and damage reduction from elites. This also gives you armor. I didn't take this extra armor. If you don't want this, you can save 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. And those 8 points you can maybe put towards this one here if you want more damage. Hopefully everything here is clear. Hopefully you understand why I took whatever I took. And as well, don't forget about swapping out exploit for destruction in terms of their placement eventually. But you want to use destruction here early until you get this one and level it and invest into it solid points.
To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer wanna be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struckweb. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.